Right now on Morning News Now, encouraging progress toward a peace deal with Iran this morning as Vice President JD Vance leads that U.S. delegation into a second day of talks overseas. But will Israel's continued attacks on Hezbollah forces in Lebanon throw this latest deal in doubt? We'll bring you the latest in a moment. Plus, more mayhem from Mother Nature, bringing yet another round of wild weather to millions across America's heartland. From twisters and downpours to sizzling waves of hot heat out west, we've got your full forecast as the first official week of summer kicks off. Breaking this morning on the out, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer announcing he will step down after months of pressure coming from within his own party. But who could be next in line to take his place as the country's seventh leader in a decade? And later in the hour, summer bummer, while your social media feed might be flooded with harmful misinformation on sunscreen right as the season starts to heat up, and how you can weed out fact from fiction. An important conversation we will have with a doctor a little later this morning. Good morning, and thank you so much for starting your week with us. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is on assignment today. We're going to begin this morning with the latest on negotiations to end the war with Iran. Vice President JD Vance will lead a second day of talks today in Switzerland as head of the U.S. delegation. Yesterday, he met with Iranian officials and key negotiators who left day one of negotiations saying they've made, quote, encouraging progress towards a peace deal. The meetings fall in the 60-day window negotiated under that memorandum of understanding to end the war that was signed by President Trump just last week. But Israel's continued strikes on Lebanon and Iran's ongoing threats to ships in the Strait of Hormuz could put that days-old deal at risk. We have a team standing by with everything you need to know from the latest on the ground to analysis on this deal. We're going to begin in Washington with NBC News Washington reporter Alice Barr. Alice, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Iran is protesting new threats from President Trump to return to fighting if diplomacy fails and to potentially take over the Strait of Hormuz, just as negotiators are working to get a long-term deal off the ground. And we're expecting to hear any time now from Vice President JD Vance. High-stakes peace talks with Iran entering a second day today after a marathon first round Sunday in Switzerland, with Vice President JD Vance leading the U.S. negotiating team focused heavily on Iran's nuclear program and the potential to lift U.S. sanctions.
If they are willing to give up nuclear weapons ambitions for the long term, then the United States is willing to fundamentally transform our relationship with that country.
At the same time, President Trump telling Fox News in a Sunday morning phone interview that he told the Iranians directly if they close the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. will, quote, blow the S out of them and they won't have a country. Iran claimed over the weekend that it did close the strait, though the U.S. disputes that. The president also posted a threat to hit Iran very hard again unless it stops its proxies in Lebanon, a reference to Hezbollah militants whose continued fighting with Israel risks derailing the broader peace deal, as Democrats slam the president's approach.
An arsonist starting a fire and getting credit for running out of the burning building. This president has led this nation into a disaster. We have surrendered our power.
The U.S., along with mediators Qatar and Pakistan, say they've already made great progress, establishing a high-level committee to oversee technical talks aimed at reaching a final deal within the next 60 days that will need to overcome looming obstacles. Iran's foreign minister posted overnight that the first round of talks delivered major progress toward ending the fighting in Lebanon. Among other key issues, negotiators are scheduled to continue the rest of this week, even as Iranian state media reported that Iranian officials consider those recent threats from President Trump a serious violation of the agreement. Savannah?
Yeah, and actually we're just moments away from hearing from Vice President Vance, who is leading that U.S. delegation, and we're going to bring you that live literally within seconds from now. Alice, though, while we wait for him, there's this looming question about what the U.S. actually gets out of all of this. Tell us what the administration is saying about that right now, quickly.
Yeah, and a big question about how this differs from past administrations. We're hearing, especially from Iranian officials, that there's going to be some of the Iranian frozen assets unfrozen, that's already been discussed. That is something President Trump seriously criticized under the Obama nuclear deal, and his administration has been saying that this is different than what Obama tried past administrations. We've heard from a number of Trump officials that the key point here is that the U.S. has already shown that it's willing to use the military option and can say that with the kind of authority that Democratic administrations, when they tried this, did not. And they're banking that that's going to make the difference here.
All right, Alice, thank you so much. Let's now head to Switzerland, where Vice President JD Vance is leading that U.S. delegation in these negotiations to end the war with Iran. He's speaking ahead of the second day of talks. Let's listen in.
If Israel responds, if there are other conflicts that arise in the region, we're actually talking to each other and figuring out how to stop the shooting, how to make the region safer, our allies and everybody else. We set that up as well. Number three, and this is probably what we're most excited about as Americans, the Iranians have agreed to invite IAEA inspectors back into their country. That is a major milestone for the American people and the first step in permanently denuclearizing or permanently ending a nuclear weapons program in Iran. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. That's exactly what we asked to happen. We made a lot of great progress on other nuclear talks. And that leads me to the final thing that we wanted to accomplish, which is actually set up the process for the technical negotiations that will follow. Our teams working with the Iranians, the Qataris, and the Pakistanis made great progress yesterday. They will continue to work at the technical level with the teams here in Bergenstock. And then those technical negotiations are going to continue over the weeks and days to come. We wanted to set up a structure for that so that you could have proper political oversight, but obviously, as much as this place is very beautiful, I can't stay here for the next 60 days. I'm about to go back home to the United States. But the technical teams are going to be working with proper oversight to make sure that we're accomplishing the objectives that matter for everybody. So those are the things that we wanted to accomplish. We came here. We did exactly that. The way that I think about it is very simple. We laid a very good foundation for a successful final deal. The final deal is the house. We set the foundation. We haven't built the house, but we've laid a successful foundation to get to a good place for the American people. I think it's important for all of us to appreciate how much was done, but honestly, there is still a lot to do as we continue to make progress on the nuclear talks, on the economic talks, as we continue to demine the straits and ensure that that flow of traffic continues to pick back up. A lot of progress, but still some work to do, and we're very committed to doing exactly that. So with that, I'm happy to take a few questions from guys in the audience. I appreciate you guys being here. Let's start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Did the president's threats yesterday really throw a wrench in negotiations? There were reports that the Iranians walked out at one point. Can you just clarify and tell us what happened?
No, they didn't throw a wrench in the system. The thing with the Iranians, yes, they did threaten to walk out, or at least there were social media threats that they would walk out. But we were negotiating well past 1 in the morning yesterday, so they didn't walk out. And their technical team is still here in Bergenstock working with our technical team actually as we speak, though I imagine maybe some of them are taking a break to watch this news conference. But look, what we told the Iranians yesterday is when you guys engage in what us millennials might call trash talk, you can't expect the President of the United States not to respond and not to correct the record. So when they say things that aren't true, the President is going to respond to it. I'm going to respond to it. Americans are going to respond to it. When they make threats that aren't rooted in reality, they have to accept that the President of the United States is actually going to set the record straight. That's all that happened. So yes, there was a little bit of threatening, there was a little bit of whining, but at the end of the day, the talks continued and we made great progress.
On the nuclear inspectors, when do you expect them to be welcomed into Iran? Is there a time frame that you guys are looking at? And also in terms of when we could see this entire conflict end, do you think this can end by the midterm elections?
Well, look, right now the conflict is in a ceasefire, and certainly our hope is that we get to the final deal and a permanent settlement. But right now, I think we've made great progress, and we should all celebrate that. In terms of when the nuclear inspectors are going to start, it's funny, we were trying to call some of the inspectors last night around 2 in the morning. As you can expect, not many people were answering their phone at 2 in the morning. I expect that will happen at the minimum this week. But we think even some of those conversations with the inspectors and with the IAEA could happen as soon as today. But I haven't checked in with our team since we made that 2 a.m. phone call to some of those inspectors. Sorry.
Mr. Vice President, Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Did you, going in, expect the Iranians to make Lebanon as much of a linchpin as they ended up doing? And how would you describe the progress on Lebanon? I know Mr. Araghchi said it was very good progress, but what's your characterization of it?
Yeah, I would describe it as very good progress, too. I mean, look, we want a regional ceasefire, right? We want Hezbollah to stop firing at our friends in Israel. We want Israelis to be able to live in peace. We also want to make sure that, when things happen, they don't spiral into a broader escalation. And so we've been, I think, very good at setting up what we're calling a deconfliction mechanism. But what it really is to say that when things happen, the sides are actually talking to one another. Sometimes, you've got a bit of a chicken and egg problem, that you've got a junior guy who fires a drone that didn't have approval from the high command. Okay, of course, Israel has to respond to that. But then sometimes that response, we could actually have a better and more peaceful situation if Israel responds in the context of a conversation that's ongoing between Hezbollah, Lebanon, Israel, and other partners in the region. There really hasn't been a mechanism to have those discussions until basically around 4 p.m. yesterday, Bergenstock time, when we set that up. So what we're trying to do is to say, first of all, Israel and every other nation in the region has the right of self-defense, but we want to make sure that everybody has that right of self-defense in the background where we're talking about how to de-escalate these conflicts rather than spiraling out of control. Sometimes what will happen is that if the conflict spirals out of control, that's worse for everybody's self-defense and worse for everybody's security. So we've actually got the process in place to ensure that that escalation doesn't happen. Now, I will say you already see the fruits of that. Over the past 24 hours, it's probably been the most peaceful that we've seen the situation in Lebanon. The previous 24 hours were pretty good. Obviously, there was some shooting about 72 hours ago. So this is a work in progress. But what we've done is actually set up the operation so that we can ensure it doesn't spiral out of control in the future.
Does the U.S. want Israel to withdraw forces from southern Lebanon?
Well, we want Israel's security to be protected, and we also want Lebanon's sovereignty to be protected, and this is going to be an ongoing conversation. The Israelis have been very clear they do not have territorial intentions on South Lebanon. The reason they feel they have to be there is because they're worried about Hezbollah fighters in South Lebanon firing into Israel. We do believe, of course it's going to require a lot of hard work, that we can get to a place where Lebanon's territorial integrity and sovereignty is protected, Israel's security is protected, and that's going to require some coordination with the Lebanese armed forces, and also it's going to require the Iranians to rein in Hezbollah. That's all the sort of things that we were talking about yesterday, and again, I think that we got much further compared to where we were just 24 hours ago.
Have you spoken with Prime Minister Netanyahu during any of this process at all in the recent days?
Yeah, we were in constant contact with the Israelis yesterday, but also, of course, with the Saudis and the Emiratis and others in the region. We talked to the Lebanese yesterday as well, so we're constantly trying to keep our regional friends updated about this. This is not a deal that the United States is imposing on the region. This is a deal that the region has desperately asked the United States to put in place. Obviously, the headlines have been very focused about what's been going on between the United States and Iran, but this region has been a basket case for a very long time. And what the president has set us to do, again, lay the foundation, see if we can get to a permanent peace. If we can't, the President of the United States still has a lot of options to accomplish America's security objectives, but he has certainly committed us to this pathway for now, and we're going to keep on working and seeing what we can accomplish. And then I want to just, before we depart here, I want to say one last thing. I've seen some misreporting about frozen or unfrozen Iranian assets. One of the other things that we wanted to do, and wasn't as high of a priority for us for obvious reasons, but we wanted to make sure that we set up a process where if we ever unfreeze Iranian assets, we can ensure that that money, that Iranian money, goes to help the people of Iran and not to fund terrorism. So Jared Kushner actually came up with a very interesting solution with the Qataris, where basically, again, if there is any frozen Iranian assets that are unfrozen, then we have approval over that process. The Qataris have approval over that process. And then the money would actually go to buy American soy, American corn, and American wheat for the benefit of the Iranian people. And as much as I see some of the press misreporting on this, and of course, buttressed by what the Iranians are saying, or not all Iranians, I want to be clear. There are a lot of Iranians who are telling the truth about what happened yesterday, but you see some social media reporting that gets this wrong. But fundamentally, what Jared and the Qataris and the entire team here in Bergenstock accomplished is, to me, a classic Trump deal, where if Iranian assets are ever unfrozen, they're going to go to make American farmers richer and to feed the Iranian people. That's a very, very good and very classic Trump deal that's great for our people, great for the people of Iran, and fundamentally, again, will contribute to this regional security architecture that we've built and that we're going to work very hard to ensure that it endures. So from Switzerland, thank you all for being here. I appreciate the questions and I appreciate the engagement. I am looking forward to going back home, and we'll certainly keep everybody updated on what happens in the days and weeks to come. Thank you all.
You've been listening to Vice President Vance speaking ahead of the second day of Iran peace talks in Switzerland. He is leading the U.S. delegation there. We want to bring in NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley. He's in Tel Aviv. He's got the latest from the region and also reaction here. Matt, of course, a lot of what we just heard there, the questions directed at the vice president, really had to do with exactly what is a topic of conversation where you are, which is what is happening between Israel and Lebanon, how that impacts the broader peace talks. The vice president essentially put it down to needing to find this sort of walk a tightrope of sovereignty for Lebanon, but security for Israel, saying that Israel has no territorial intentions, that their intentions are safety only. How is that playing out, what you're seeing there along the border with southern Lebanon?
I mean, this has been a real major issue for the Israeli government and for internal Israeli politics. And you'll notice one of the things that they asked Vice President Vance, or a reporter asked, was, have you been in touch with the Israeli prime minister? And he kind of said, yeah, we are. But we're also in touch with the Saudis and the Qataris, et cetera, throughout the Gulf. So it doesn't sound like that was a particularly convincing answer, that they've had a very close relationship, the Israelis and the Americans, in these negotiations. And that is something that is hitting really hard here in Israel. The realization that the Trump administration hasn't really been advocating for Israel in these negotiations has been a scandal for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Even the military is essentially saying over and over again that we are able to do everything we can. We heard this just again yesterday. The Israeli military saying our hands are not tied. We are not withdrawing. We are staying the course in Lebanon, despite what we're hearing from the United States. And Vance, of course, also mentioned this isn't a deal that's going to be imposed on anyone. Well, here in Israel, it very much is seen as a deal that's being imposed by the Americans on Israeli forces without really any Israeli input at all. So that's going to be very difficult going forward. We've already seen that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and others are willing to really walk right up to the line of breaking the ceasefire, or breaking the ceasefire blatantly, even under pressure from the United States.
Matt, also just put in context the magnitude of this situation, what it means for people who live on either side of that border, Israel or Lebanon, but the broader picture about the fact that this particular disagreement, Hezbollah and Israel, and the fighting that we've seen, it does have the potential to derail this larger peace deal we're talking about.
That's what's really interesting about all of this. And really, one of the things when we talk about how favorable this deal was for Tehran, one of the things that we don't always mention, and it's very important within this region, is the way in which Tehran was able to bundle together Lebanon and this broader ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran. They did that. That was something the Israelis have been resisting really strongly. They don't want to see a formal connection made between Iran and Lebanon, between Hezbollah and Iran. And instead, that's exactly what happened. And it's going to be very hard for the Israelis to unbundle, to decouple those two issues now that they're so closely connected. The Americans, by releasing this memorandum of understanding, has essentially, and this is the view from here in Israel, has essentially recognized that coupling between those two. That means that this potential smaller conflict could have a destructive effect on the broader ceasefire, and it already has.
Matt Bradley from Tel Aviv for us. Thank you very much. For analysis on this, let's bring in former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Joel Rubin. He's also the author of the book, Saving Democratic Foreign Policy, and the briefing book on Substack. Joel, good morning. As always, we appreciate your time. First, Savannah, I'd love just your reaction to what we heard from the Vice President there. Kind of read the tea leaves for me. He's saying, and we knew this even before we just heard those brief comments from him, that they see this moving towards progress, that it's been encouraging. What do you think about what might be happening behind closed doors based on what we just heard from the Vice President?
Yeah, Savannah, a lot of happy talk right there from the Vice President. Clearly, he's trying to put a brave face on what's been a very difficult start to these negotiations. And remember, the MOU that came out about the whole peace operation that we're discussing was seen as very tilted towards Iran, not really coming in from a position of strength by the United States, but almost one where the president is chasing Iran and hoping that he can get a deal to keep the Straits of Hormuz open and get out of this war. So Vice President Vance is trying to straighten that out. A lot of the pushback over the last 24 hours as well, I think you can see in his messaging related to Israel, related to the IAEA, lots of little nuggets to try to say, look, we've got this and we're in control and things are going well. But I really do want to see what's in black and white. That's always what tells you what truly is happening at the table.
And Joel, certainly telling there that while we have these bigger sort of this whole bulleted list that we have questions about, where do we land with Iran's nuclear program? What does happen to the Strait of Hormuz? Even in that room, really, a lot of reporters were focused on what we were just discussing with Matt Bradley, which is what is happening between Israel and Lebanon, because if that derails even making this deal permanent, even really getting to the point of going through some of those finer points, it's sort of all for naught. What do you make of what he said about the current situation between Lebanon and Israel, and really saying it's this question of sovereignty for Lebanon and security for Israel?
Well, you know, Savannah, there's an old saying in diplomacy, which is that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that might very well mean that Israel is feeling like they're about to be eaten. And I think this really points to an inherent weakness here, which is that from the American position, which is that we're not going in with our traditional allies. Israel, of course, being a core ally, one that we fought alongside for the last several months in active military operations. And then historically, on the Iran negotiations, the Europeans, where are they? They're nowhere to be seen. And the idea that the president's team has to, and the vice president has to call the IAEA at 2 a.m. to try to wake somebody up is astounding. The IAEA should have been at the table already. They should have been in the discussions already. They should have had a plan. And so these core components to any negotiation are almost being treated as afterthought issues that have to be figured out in real time. And so I worry that that weakens their commitment to whatever comes out. And certainly that will make it harder for the vice president's team to get to a deal that can be respected and succeed.
Joel, put simply, who do you think has the upper hand in these negotiations, the U.S. or Iran?
Oh, I think it's clearly Iran at this stage. You know, without a doubt, the Iranians, even when they and you saw the vice president talk about in his presser when they talked about closing the straits, and when Hezbollah conducted strikes against the Israelis, which are both violations of paragraph 1 of the MOU, the vice president tried to smooth it over and say that it was no big deal. And President Trump, he's out there throwing rhetorical bombs from 5,000 miles away. But I think it shows that the United States that we really do want to stay at this table because we are very desperate to keep the Straits of Hormuz open. And it gives a sense of sort of following the Iranian lead on these negotiations right now. And I think that puts us in a very difficult position over the long run to get to a final deal that will be seen as truly effective.
Joel Rubin, thanks as always for joining us. For more, let's bring in NBC News senior national politics reporter John Allen. John, good morning. Let's talk about the vice president's role in this here. What is the significance of JD Vance being the one who is leading these negotiations, being the one that we just heard from there?
Well, he's the highest level person in the United States government that is an active part of these negotiations. You heard President Trump joke last week that if they were going better, President Trump would claim credit, and if they went poorly, he would blame JD Vance. That's not only a joke, that's historically true in Washington, that the vice president gets put into these very difficult jobs, whether it's this vice president or others. I think the other significance, though, is that it shows the United States is very serious about this. Of course, the president of the United States wasn't going to take all that time for preliminary negotiations. As you heard the vice president say, there is a hope that they can get to a final deal. This is not even a situation where they are expressing confidence about that, but only perhaps optimism.
John, also, we've been discussing a lot because of the questions that the vice president was asked there in the room, how the tensions between Israel and Lebanon are impacting this wider deal. Also, I'm wondering, how are these negotiations impacting the relationship between President Trump and the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu?
There's absolutely tension there. Recently, Netanyahu said that they are the leaders of two proud countries, and sometimes they see eye to eye and sometimes they don't. President Trump has been frustrated with Netanyahu in the past, so has President Biden, and yet the United States' support for Israel's self-defense has been unwavering. You heard Vice President Vance just at this press conference reiterate that. And at the same time, the United States is trying to negotiate on behalf of Israel and have Iran negotiate on behalf of Lebanon and on behalf of Hezbollah. There are a lot of parties here that are concerned that are not, as Joel pointed out, sitting at the table. But I got to tell you, Savannah, if you want to judge how negotiations are going, if they were going well, the President of the United States would not be threatening to prevent the Iranian delegation from making it home safely.
All right, John Allen with a great point there. Thank you so much. Let's switch over to another top story for us this morning, and that is the weather. Summer is off to a dangerous start across much of the country. There was this deadly night of severe weather across the Midwest. Dozens of reported tornadoes tore through several states, killing at least 3 people in Illinois and Kansas, and communities are waking up to widespread damage. We've also got a dangerous heat wave gripping the West, where extreme temperatures have been linked to deaths at the Grand Canyon. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson joins us from Houston with more. Priscilla, good morning. So first, let's start on those deadly storms that swept across the Midwest overnight. What's the latest?
Yeah, Savannah, some reported 40 tornadoes from Colorado to Indiana. We saw a dozen of those in Illinois and then 24 in Indiana, and just some really dramatic images of those funnel clouds coming out of the Midwest. There was also a lot of heavy rain and wind in parts of Oklahoma and Kansas. We even saw drivers who were stranded on roads in Kansas. That also another issue. And sadly, at least 3 deaths reported across both Kansas and Illinois. Savannah.
Priscilla, what are authorities saying about the damage and the communities that were hit hardest by these tornadoes?
Yeah, the damage is devastating, as we often see in these situations. There was a shopping center in Evansville, Indiana, where you just see glass blown out and debris everywhere. And these are the kind of scenes that we're seeing in some of these areas. It's particularly difficult when it's people's homes. We know just those homes damaged and things that people have worked their entire lives for destroyed. And so you hear officials in these areas talking about that, the impact to these communities, and just urging people to remain weather aware as this severe weather continues to roll through. Savannah?
And Priscilla, let's talk about that extreme heat I mentioned out west turning deadly, including like at the Grand Canyon. How dangerous are conditions today?
Yeah, Grand Canyon officials confirming 3 deaths, 2 incidents on both June 12th and June 16th, where there were folks who were between the ages of 67 to 78 who died hiking on some of those trails, where we know it can reach up to 109 degrees. And there is more heat that is going to be stifling parts of the West today. And so you hear officials urging people to not stay out in that heat too long. Make sure you're drinking lots of water and just paying attention to the signs of your body if you are becoming overheated. I will tell you, here in Houston already it is 80 degrees and the sun is barely up, and we are expected to get a feels-like temperature in the triple digits before the day is over. Savannah?
Priscilla, I was just about to ask you how things are going there where you are in Texas, but I know it's going to be a scorcher. All right, Priscilla Thompson for us. Thank you so much. Stay cool. Stay safe. For more on this, let's get a check at our morning news now weather. We've got Andrea Romero joining us with the latest this morning. Hey, Andrea, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. And yeah, we have the heat to talk about, but we also have that severe weather threat, that flash flooding threat that we have actually this morning. Right now, we're tracking all these powerful thunderstorms that are impacting parts of Oklahoma into Arkansas. At this moment, we have over 40 million people that are being impacted by these flood watches, these flash flood warnings that are in effect. We can see here stretching through Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas, and even here in parts of Tennessee. So this severe weather will continue, and it's stretching along this frontal boundary that will continue to bring a soggy start, especially for the East Coast. Today, we have isolated storms that will be stretching all the way up into the high plains. And we can see about 54 million people will be at risk of these wind gusts of up to 60 miles per hour, damaging hail. And although the tornado risk is not as high as yesterday, we can't rule out an isolated tornado or two that can develop, even stretching into the northeast this afternoon and this evening. Tomorrow, the severe threat will continue, and that will be across the plains, some strong storms with wind and hail. About 50 million people will be at risk. Tomorrow, parts of Kansas will be impacted by this severe weather. And as far as the rainfall totals, we're looking at 1, 2, 3 inches of rainfall that can fall with this system. And of course, we have all those heat alerts stretching all the way from California into the Southwest, into Texas, and even into parts of Florida. We can see those high temperatures, triple digits in El Paso, not only today, but the next couple of days. And while the West and the South is dealing with the heat, we do have relief from the heat stretching over the Great Lakes, the northern plains, into the Northeast, where the next couple of days will be a bit cooler and more comfortable for that first week of summer. Savannah, back to you.
All right, Andrea, thank you so much. Well, some sad news now. This morning, we are learning that former Federal Reserve Chairman and renowned economist Alan Greenspan has died. Greenspan was first nominated to the Federal Reserve by President Ronald Reagan in 1987 and served across 4 administrations before retiring in 2006. That made him the second longest tenured Fed chair in U.S. history. Greenspan led the U.S. economy through an unparalleled period of modernization with the rise of the internet. He was regarded by many as a steadying force during that era. Greenspan was also widely seen as one of the most influential economists in American history. He also was the beloved husband of our NBC News colleague, Andrea Mitchell. In a new statement, Mitchell says, quote, "He will be remembered for his brilliance and his kindness. Being his life partner was the joy of my life." He was 100 years old, and we are thinking about our friend and colleague, Andrea, this morning. There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including a look ahead to Team USA's next World Cup matchup, fresh off their win against Australia this weekend. Do they have what it takes to win it all? First, though, a leadership shakeup over in Britain has Prime Minister Keir Starmer packing up at 10 Downing Street, who will become the UK's 7th leader in a decade. More on that next. We're back now with breaking news out of the United Kingdom. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced he is resigning. It comes after weeks of pressure from ministers and lawmakers calling on him to step down. Here is some of what he had to say outside Downing Street a little earlier this morning.
The question my party is asking now is whether I am best placed to lead us into the next general election. I have heard the answer of my parliamentary party to that question, and I accept that answer with good grace. Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News International correspondent Molly Hunter, who joins us from London. Molly, good morning. Big news for you across the pond here. We've been talking about this pressure on Starmer to quit for months now. Why did it finally happen today, do we think?
Yeah, Savannah, this is not a huge surprise, not entirely unexpected. We've been talking about this pressure that's been ramping up, and basically in the last couple of days, it's been almost kind of a rebellion as senior cabinet ministers have abandoned ship. Now, our understanding is that the prime minister spent the weekend out at his country estate, Chequers, with his wife, with his kids, kind of reflecting on the decision. And you heard it there just now in the sound that you played, Savannah. He said it was very clear. He had received the message from his party that party members no longer had faith in his leadership. So he clearly decided, why this morning, we're not exactly sure, but he clearly decided that it was no longer tenable, Savannah.
Molly, what happens next? What do we know about a timetable for when exactly he steps down?
Right. So while this was not a total surprise, what labor leaders and what many people in the country were waiting to hear is what would actually be the process. And he did lay that out in his speech. So we have a little bit of a timeline. Nominations for his replacement, so other labor leaders who could possibly take over, that will open up July 9th. Then there are two options based on the British political system. So if there is only one candidate, Savannah, it will be an orderly transition, what British journalists are calling kind of a coronation. It will pass from Keir Starmer to the next person. And I know we're going to get to him, but Andy Burnham is the runaway favorite. He's the former mayor of Manchester. He just won a parliament seat by a resounding margin on Friday. But if there are multiple candidates, there will be a leadership contest, so an election for prime minister within the Labour Party. Now, Starmer said all of that will be wrapped up by September, Savannah. That is a pretty tight timeline. He will stay in office. But I just want to flag, actually, one part of his very short, very measured speech this morning is actually getting a lot of attention here. Take a listen to that.
And when I leave the biggest job in the country, I shall spend more time on the most important job, being the best husband I can to my fantastic wife, Vic, who has been a rock by my side through good times and bad, and being the best dad I can to my beautiful children, who are my pride and my joy.
And you hear him choking up there, Savannah. This is a man who is often criticized for kind of failing to show emotion, failing to emotionally connect with the electorate. So that's part of the speech that people are really talking about this morning. Savannah.
Molly, you mentioned this frontrunner, Andy Burnham. What would he do differently? What's different about the two men?
Well, so a lot of it will wait to be seen. We're obviously waiting to hear any kind of reaction from Andy Burnham and Andy Burnham's team today. But he does appear to be the runaway favorite. It is definitely not a done deal, as I just described. But he's the former mayor of Greater Manchester. He is nicknamed the King of the North. He has a lot of pride for the north of this country, and he is riding a real wave of popularity. Now, he is not an unknown quantity to labor leaders. He's tried to win labor leadership elections before. He lost in 2010 to Ed Miliband. He lost in 2015 to Jeremy Corbyn. But when he won this special election, Savannah, on Friday, huge support, huge popularity, he laid out kind of a distinct vision of this country that included taking utilities back into public ownership and, really importantly, decentralizing Westminster's power. He really wants more power to be in the hands of regional leaders. So we'll be watching this one very, very closely, Savannah.
Molly, even before the announcement, President Trump weighed in. I want to read some of what he said. He said Keir Starmer will resign as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He failed badly on two very important subjects, immigration and energy, going on to say, I wish him well. How's that being received over there? What do you think it says about the current relationship here?
Yeah, the current relationship, as we have documented, as we have talked about, Savannah, lots over the last couple of months, is not a good one. That will certainly be in the hands of the next prime minister. Keir Starmer definitely talked about how he mended relations with European leaders, didn't say much about how he had approached or how he had kind of managed that relationship with the White House. But certainly we're waiting for any kind of reaction from the White House today. I assume we will hear a very, I would say, no, maybe I told you so from President Trump later today. Savannah.
All right. Molly Hunter covering breaking news for us this morning out of the UK. Thanks, Molly. Good to see you. Well, here in the U.S., soccer fans cannot wait until the next time the men's national team will suit up at the World Cup. We're going to get to that in just a sec. But first, let's go through a quick recap of some of the tournament highlights over the weekend. Japan put on a show by easily beating Tunisia 4-0 yesterday. Even with several of their biggest stars out with injuries, Japan has 4 points in the group stage, which puts them in a tie for first through the first two games. Meanwhile, tournament favorites Spain also won 4-0 yesterday. They dominated against Saudi Arabia to take the top spot in that group, Group H. But that's also in part thanks to Cape Verde, who are continuing their magical debut at the World Cup. The tiny island nation came from behind to tie Uruguay 2-2 in stunning fashion. Those two goals also mark the nation's first ever at the World Cup. It comes after they shocked Spain by holding them to a scoreless draw last week. That's just one of the many incredible stories that makes the World Cup so special. So now let's get to the U.S. men's national team. They've officially clinched their first place in their group after beating Australia on Friday. Of course, the Americans have advanced into the knockout round before, but their early dominance has some people wondering, could this be the year they go all the way? NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch has more on their impressive run.
U.S. men's national team just won back-to-back World Cup matches for the first time since 1930, punching their ticket to the knockout round. The American men have advanced many times before, but in the modern era, this is the fastest they've ever clinched, with momentum, star power, and electrified hometown fans on their side.
When people start thinking this team could go all the way, is that reasonable or is that bonkers?
I think it's putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
Former U.S. men's star Taylor Twellman says while the Americans have not been fully tested yet, they're in a strong position, officially winning their group, even before playing Turkey this week.
It gives you a real upper hand of avoiding any of the heavy hitters until the quarterfinals, and that gives the United States some real hope.
They also have crucial breathing room heading into the Turkey match, because win, lose, or draw, the Americans will remain the group winner. Star forward Christian Pulisic is recovering from injury. Meanwhile, Folarin Balogun, Tyler Adams, Chris Richards, and Anthony Robinson have all been shown a yellow card. 2 group stage yellow cards means a player misses his next match.
Anyone on yellow, they're not playing. Christian Pulisic, he's not playing. There's absolutely no reason to risk any of that. Give yourself a full tank of gas going into the knockout stage.
All right, thanks to Jesse Kirsch for that report. Well, the U.S. men's national team will wrap up their group stage matches in Los Angeles this Thursday against Turkey. Well, coming up, a summer bummer that's flooding social media feeds across America. Misinformation on sunscreen. It could burn some TikTok users right as the season really starts to heat up. That's next on Morning News Now. We're back with a new study that shows a concerning pattern with videos about sunscreen on social media. So researchers here looked at hundreds of posts on TikTok and found that while most videos did encourage people to wear sunscreen, the ones that go viral, the ones that a lot of people see, are often packed with misleading claims like sunburns aren't dangerous or sunscreen is toxic and causes cancer. Both those statements are not true. For more on this, I'm joined now by board-certified dermatologist Dr. Michelle Henry. Dr. Henry, good morning.
Good morning.
So great to have you here on set with us. So we've actually heard a couple of these. Not the first study to kind of like delve into social media and sunscreen. What do you want people to know, though, about sunscreen, just as like the overarching headline, no matter what they might be seeing on their TikTok page?
Yes, so the message is this: sunscreen is safe, effective, and one of the best tools we have to prevent skin cancer, premature aging, and UV damage. It works. You know, there's a lot of fear-mongering out there, but the only real risk is unprotected UV exposure.
So it's interesting because some of these claims online, like I just said, which are not true, are that sunscreen causes cancer. But like you're definitively saying, as we've known, by the way, for years, that it's the opposite.
Exactly. What I tell my patients is virality is not validity, you know, and this misinformation ends up in my office with patients taking risks that they shouldn't. We have from data, decades of data, that does not prove that it causes cancer. You know, of course, we have to keep looking at the information, but we know this is safe. And we know that UV light is a class 1 carcinogen, meaning it's the same as cigarette smoke and arsenic.
Wow. What is it that can happen to you for extended periods of time not wearing sunscreen? I know obviously skin cancer is a concern, but like what are these other big risks?
Yeah, so you know, part of the tricky thing about sun exposure is that it's cumulative. And so especially for a young person, they don't see it immediately, but your skin never forgets. So some of the first signs, of course, burns, which are going to compromise your skin barrier, hyperpigmentation. You know, I have a lot of patients have autoimmune diseases, and so they can get scarring and blistering from excess sun exposure. So sun can be very, very damaging, and it's really compromising our skin's immune system.
One of the things that we were just talking about this before we came back from the commercial break is it's big news that we're going to get like a new ingredient, I guess, in sunscreen that's going to make it more akin to a lot of times what people find overseas, like in Europe, and people will comment on how it like, sort of feels better there and all that kind of stuff. But I think that goes to the point that there are lots of different types of sunscreens. How do you know what's best for you?
Yes, so we are very excited about about bemetrizanol. That's the new filter.
Okay.
It's a modern filter, and so we're very excited about that. And it fits into the chemical category, but it's a new type of chemical filter. It is broad spectrum. It's more elegant. It doesn't absorb as much. And so here we have chemical and mineral sunscreens. Chemical sunscreens require you to wait 15 minutes before you go out. They kind of absorb the light, and then disperse it as heat. Mineral sunscreens reflect. And this just gives us something that's more elegant, is very effective, and has been proven safe for a very long time.
What's your broader concern about people getting information like this online, whether it's about their skincare and concern that they would talk to you as a dermatologist or any other type of health information?
You know, it's hard. Again, it's that virality is not validity. And so people really look at social media as if it has more likes and there's more engagement, that it's more sound. And that's just not the case. And the evidence shows that this fear-mongering information gets more engagement, but it does not mean it's true. And what scares us is that it changes behavior. You know, it's easier to go on TikTok than to get in your dermatologist's office, unfortunately. And these behavioral changes, we're going to see the consequences of that in the future, and that's terrifying.
Oh, all right, great information. Dr. Michelle Henry, thank you for joining us. Good to see you. Well, coming up, if the start of summer has you cleaning out your closet, stick around because we've got some money-saving tips on how you can get even more miles out of your favorite fits as those prices tick up. That's next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. Before you toss out that pilly sweater or maybe a scuffed up pair of sneakers, you might want to think twice because prices on everything from shoes to handbags, they are climbing. Leather goods are expected to jump as much as 20% over the next 2 years. So replacing your favorites is not going to be cheap. The good news is there are easy, affordable ways to give your clothes, shoes, and bags a second life, saving money while also bonus cutting down on waste. NBC News Chief Consumer Investigative Correspondent Vicki Nguyen has some tips.
From cashmere, wool, and leather to your favorite sneakers, what starts out as chic can quickly turn shabby after lots of use. But experts at the Good Housekeeping Institute say you can rehab those clothing staples with a few easy steps.
With a little bit of money in these new tricks, you'll be able to get your items looking much better.
Yeah, and it's better for your wallet and the environment.
Absolutely.
Emma Seymour is Associate Director of their Textiles Lab. She says one of the most common wear and tear issues is pilling on your sweaters. The fix? A deep pillow. Price tag around $30.
It has a blade in here, and you just rub it very gently against the surface, and it's going to remove those little balls of fiber.
That took no time at all, and the sweater looks almost brand new. Like the big pills came right off.
It's so quick and easy, and you can even see in here really just how much it was able to take off.
And cashmere is pricey, so you want to hang on to it as long as you can. To clean your sweater, she says, don't dry clean. That can wear them out faster. Instead, hand wash them in cold water with a few drops of a gentle detergent.
You don't want to be too rough on it. You don't want to squish it. Let it soak for 30 minutes is around the best time before you're going to rinse it out.
And she says always dry the item flat, never on a hanger.
If you ever see a sweater, one side's longer or the neck is misshapen, a lot of times that's from hanging. So always want to lay it flat to dry.
And you've got a trick with the towel?
Yeah, so one trick to get some of the water out is to just roll it like this.
Oh, got it.
This cotton towel is going to help pull some of that water out.
Seymour says to extend your sweater's life, fold it when storing, ideally with some cedar planks.
So it prevents moths from getting in there. It basically repels them, and they are the most common culprit of those little holes in your sweaters.
Got it. So never hang sweaters. They should always be folded.
Keep that folded in a drawer. It will really help it keep its shape.
Seymour says to bring your leather items back into shape, like this bag that belonged to her mom, use a dedicated leather cleaner. First, wipe the bag down, then apply a leather conditioner.
So it helps moisturize the bag just like your skin, and so it doesn't dry out.
It feels really soft.
And it looks a lot nicer and refreshed.
That's also so precious, is being able to preserve items that are handed down to you, like this bag from your mom. You couldn't go out and get a new one in the store.
100%. These types of tools are really good to keep them looking nice and new, even though they're old.
But what about your old, scuffed up sneakers?
You can see these two running shoes. Yeah. This is one all dingy and gross, and this is one we just cleaned.
She says first, remove the insoles and laces, then use a sneaker cleaning spray and brush to scrub off the grime.
Polish them with a damp Mr. Clean magic eraser like this, made specifically for sneakers.
This one came out super white. How much would you estimate someone could save if they were just able to clean and rehab some of their items?
Easily could be over $1,000. If you're able to just put a little bit of TLC into them, it really gets them looking nice and new.
Vicky Nguyen, NBC News.
All right, I'm ordering one of those seriously right now. That was awesome. Thanks, Vicky. Well, coming up, America's 250th birthday is coming with one very special companion. When Morning News Now returns, the team of engineers using science to help preserve this place and time in our history for generations to come. That's next. We're ending this hour with a behind-the-scenes look at the construction of America's time capsule. This historic vessel, it's set for burial on July 4th in celebration of the country's 250th birthday. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda spoke to the engineers about the science it takes to make sure the capsule can stand the test of time.
Designing, measuring, and welding. A team at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, one of the nation's oldest physical science labs, is building something to stand the test of time. A time capsule marking America's 250th birthday. Once completed, engineer Mike Barilla says the vessel, weighing a ton, will be buried 10 to 15 feet underground outside Independence Hall in Philadelphia on July 4th. The Institute leaning on its experience preserving the Bill of Rights, Constitution, and Declaration of Independence.
You know how to preserve really important things.
And I would say, in addition to really important things, really unique things.
So when you are burying something for hundreds of years, what are some of the challenges in that?
The number one killer of time capsules is water. And so every part of this time capsule design has taken water into consideration.
What do we see? It's what is believed to have turned most of this time capsule, recently unearthed at West Point after 200 years, to silt.
The box didn't quite meet expectations.
Helping keep water, rodents, and tree roots out this time around will be a lot of layers. On top of the granite platform and pedestal is a bell jar and air bubble, protecting the capsule, holding document and artifact boxes. Project manager Tom Medema says what goes in those boxes also requires a meticulous process.
The Library of Congress needs to test the material to make sure that it's durable enough to not just survive itself, but not to negatively impact other things in the capsule.
Every state and U.S. territory will contribute items ranging from challenge coins to a piece of the Wright Flyer to hand-beaded art from Montana.
So they chose a native Crow artist to do this beadwork.
There will be a crystal from the New Year's Eve ball drop and letters from every living president, along with art from students across the country. All part of a message in a bottle for our great ×8 grandchildren to uncover.
I think a lot of people would describe today's times as divisive or strained. What do you hope the time capsule does for people today?
I think that it's an incredible example of how this country can come together in a moment that is celebratory for many, commemorative for many, and fraught for many, but still believe in those foundational ideals.
Emily Ikeda, NBC News.
So cool. Incredible to hear what it takes. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Happy Monday. Thanks so much for starting your week with us. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe's on assignment. Right now on Morning News Now, path to peace. Mediators for the U.S. and Iran say they've made, quote, encouraging progress toward a peace deal in Iran as day 2 of talks get underway in Switzerland, with Vice President JD Vance leading the U.S. delegation. We'll tell you where things stand this morning. Meanwhile, attack of the algae. President Trump facing a different battle at home after his multi-million-dollar renovation of the reflecting pool in Washington has hit a snag. We will tell you who he's blaming for that bright green color coming up. Summertime storms. It's officially summer, and the change of season is bringing a severe change in temperature as millions of Americans face dangerous heat. Severe storms are threatening large swaths of the high plains and mid-Atlantic. We've got the latest forecast across the country. And summer sales. We'll show you the big ones popping up this week that can help you save on essentials all season long. Who does not love a little deal alert, right? We're going to talk to Brian Chung about that later this hour. We're going to begin this hour, though, in Switzerland, where talks continue to end the war with Iran. Vice President JD Vance, as I mentioned, is heading the U.S. delegation. He held talks with the Iranian delegation and negotiators yesterday as they work to broker a peace deal. He gave us a glimpse into how those talks went earlier this morning.
We laid a very good foundation for a successful final deal. The final deal is the house. We set the foundation. We haven't built the house, but we've laid a successful foundation to get to a good place for the American people. I think it's important for all of us to appreciate how much was done, but honestly, there is still a lot to do. There was a little bit of threatening, there was a little bit of whining, but at the end of the day, the talks continued and we made great progress.
One of the sticking points here, Israel's strikes on Lebanon and Iran's threats on the ships in Strait of Hormuz. They're rattling these efforts. NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons, he is in Switzerland with the latest on these talks. Keir, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. JD Vance in those comments here in Switzerland this morning, describing yesterday as a very, very good day in which he said they made a lot of good progress. The high-level Iranian delegation has left after what it described as 18 hours of tense talks, despite this picturesque setting. This morning, after a long day of talks with Iran, Vice President JD Vance indicating some progress is being made.
So look, yesterday was a very, very good day. We made a lot of good progress. We did exactly what we wanted to do.
Pictured late last night, hunched over a computer with President Trump's son-in-law and Qatar's Prime Minister. Then an early morning statement from Qatar and Pakistan, the talks' mediators, saying all sides agreed a roadmap towards reaching a final deal within 60 days. Earlier, high tension in the room, senior Iranian officials refusing to shake hands with US delegates in front of the cameras, a diplomat with knowledge of the talks telling NBC News. Here you can see the leader of Iran's delegation with Vice President Vance in the background looking on. Then the Iranians leave. One major disruption, continued Israeli and Hezbollah strikes in Lebanon, despite a new ceasefire. Israel is not at the talks.
We've seen great progress over the last just couple of days in ensuring that the ceasefire holds in Lebanon. These things are always a little bit messy.
Minutes later from Washington, President Trump posting, if Iran doesn't stop its proxies in Lebanon, we'll hit Iran very hard again. Iran's lead negotiator responding with his own post, writing, the US better be careful. Our armed forces are ready to respond. At one point, Iranian hardliners telling their media the Strait of Hormuz had been closed again. The US military reporting ships continue to pass. President Trump threatening Iran's delegation that if the strait was closed, you won't have a country. You won't even make it back to your expletive country. But this morning's statement from Switzerland saying the two sides agreed on working groups to focus on issues like nuclear and sanctions, calling the atmosphere positive and constructive. And Savannah, JD Vance in those comments just in the past hour or so, saying that some of the progress they have made has been around keeping the Strait of Hormuz open, deconfliction in Lebanon, and allowing nuclear inspectors back into Iran for some progress, he hopes, around Iran's nuclear program. The Iranians, on the other hand, emphasizing that they say that they have made progress around ending the conflict in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah. So the different sides emphasizing different aspects while both talking about progress this morning, Savannah.
Absolutely, Keir, and what a backdrop you've got there. Hope you get to enjoy it a little bit. Travel safe. Thank you. Well, for analysis on these negotiations, let's bring in Elise Labott. She's the author of Cosmopolitics on Substack. Elise, good morning. Thanks for joining us. So we're just days into the 60-day window for negotiations. What are your thoughts on how things have played out so far and the little glimpse into what we got from the vice president this morning?
Well, I think it's very similar to Keir, although it's certainly my backdrop isn't as beautiful. I think that, look, I think both sides are, taking pains to show that they made progress. And 18 hours of talks is really not insignificant. I think the fact that both sides are walking away with different aspects, that's really for domestic consumption. I think the main things that are holding it up right now is these trading of strikes between Hezbollah and Israel. And look, neither one of those, Savannah, are party to the agreement. And so it's really hard. I mean, it's easier for Iran to say to Hezbollah, hey, cut it out. The U.S. is trying to get Israel to stand down, but if it's going to continue to have greater continued strikes, it's said it's not going to leave Lebanon, and it's not going to stop striking back. I do think these kind of threats by President Trump, the Iranian delegation walked out at some point, and Vance had to kind of coax them back, and the mediators had to coax them back in the room. So they are continuing to talk. I think it's positive that they're continuing to talk and make progress, but it doesn't look like a lot of the big issues, particularly on the nuclear program, have been solved. The Strait is open. The Iranians have gotten their oil waivers, but there's a long way to go, as they said.
Elise, the Trump administration has popped up Vice President Vance as really like the face of this deal. Last week, President Trump had joked that Vance would be the fall guy if talks went sideways. What do you think of that strategy and the U.S. presence at these negotiations?
Well, I think it's not a joke. I think that it's pretty clear that, Vice President Vance is the face of these talks. Look, the Iranians wanted him. They said, we would like to negotiate with JD Vance. Why is that? Because Vance wants a deal. He wants to move on. He said last week in an interview that even if they don't get a nuclear deal, that at least the Strait would be open and we'll get on with our lives. He's more of the kind of isolationist wing of the party. Of the MAGA group. He doesn't really believe that there should be a war. He wants to get this deal done. But I do think he's pretty good at communicating, and I think he certainly is putting forward that he wants a deal. I do think that at this point, the Iranians hear these threats from President Trump. They really don't mean anything anymore because they know that President Trump is really loath to go back to war. And so it's really just about whether they can find a meeting of the minds to go forward on these nuclear talks. It's going to be really hard in 60 days. They're going to have to keep extending, and there's that possibility for those continued strikes in Lebanon to thwart the deal.
Elise, you mentioned the Strait of Hormuz. Sort of the two big things that we're waiting on details here are what happens with the Strait of Hormuz? When do we actually see that open to the way that it was, the capacity that it could handle prior to this war beginning? And then also President Trump's stated goal of eradicating Iran's nuclear program, a point which is supposed to be negotiated and details hammered out during this 60-day window. What do you think on both of those points, how things are going?
Well, I think the Strait is working its way to being open. There are some ships going forward. I think it's more about the comfort of, these countries and their shipping and insurance, whether they're going to feel comfortable going through. They still have to continue to demine the Strait. Right now, I think the pace is really at a trickle. But I think that looks more positive. On the nuclear deal, let's be honest. If you're going to negotiate a nuclear deal at 60 days, it's not going to be that technical. That we keep saying that other agreement took 2 years. I think what's going to happen is, this is from diplomats I'm talking to, the Strait will be open. It'll give everybody, some space to breathe. The economy will be going again. And I think these talks are going to kind of go on indefinitely. We've seen what happens with talks in Ukraine and Gaza. It could just be that they peter out. And as JD Vance said, we all go back to our lives. Savannah.
All right, Elise, thank you so much. Well, this morning, President Trump is blaming vandalism for the ongoing setbacks affecting the newly renovated reflecting pool in Washington. The landmark has been plagued with algae blooms and peeling paint. Senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is at the White House. He joins us now with more. Hey, Gabe, good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning. President Trump met with contractors at Camp David over the weekend, and he now says the reflecting pool will likely need to be drained again, less than a month after the pool was resurfaced as part of an expensive renovation. This morning, a monumental mess outside the Lincoln Memorial, with National Park Service workers scrambling to fix the iconic reflecting pool. Despite a recent $14 million renovation spearheaded by the president, the reflecting pool has been plagued with algae blooms that turn the water green and peeling paint.
Why do it in the first place? Don't fix what's not broken.
President Trump now says the reflecting pool will need to be at least partly drained for repairs immediately and is blaming the problems on vandalism without presenting any evidence. On Friday, U.S. Park Police arrested three-time Olympic canoeist David Hearn, charging him with destruction of government property after he reached into the water to touch a piece of the peeling paint. He denies doing anything wrong.
They didn't remove, tear, rip, break, or destroy any of it. The condition of the reflecting pool was the same after I stepped away from the water as it was before I got there.
Now, the Trump administration is threatening years in jail for anyone who damages the pool.
Anyone who is in a position of vandalizing or attempting to vandalize the reflecting pool will face the criminal justice system in D.C.
Maintenance of the century-old reflecting pool has been a challenge for decades. The president had pushed to overhaul it ahead of the nation's 250th anniversary celebrations, touting a new blue base.
Everybody's looking at that reflecting pool. They can't believe it. Reflects. We used a dark blue. It's called American flag blue.
But soon after the pool's reopening in the heat, the blue water turned green from that algae bloom. Workers rushed to clean it up, dumping hydrogen peroxide into it. Then, pieces of the newly repainted bottom began peeling. Now the search for a new solution is underway, with less than 2 weeks until the 4th of July. An administration official says 5 people have been arrested for vandalism as of Saturday night. 5 others issued federal citations. President Trump says he inspected the reflecting pool on Sunday. Marine One was spotted flying over the area, Savannah.
All right, Gabe, thank you so much for staying on this one for us. Well, summer's here, and it's bringing extreme weather from coast to coast. The West is dealing with a dangerous heat wave, while 54 million people across the high plains and the mid-Atlantic are under a threat of severe storms today. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson joins us from Houston with more. Hey, Priscilla, good morning.
Yeah, Savannah, good morning. Summer is off to a sizzling start with splash pads like this one likely to be in high demand across the country as you have millions that are dealing with this heat and others who are bracing for more severe storms. Overnight, summer storms slamming parts of the Midwest.
Be a violent tornado in progress.
Spawning nearly a dozen estimated tornadoes across Illinois.
It's getting bigger.
This one in Jefferson County sending debris flying. Another 24 reported twisters in Indiana.
There it is. Oh my gosh, it's so big.
Leaving a path of destruction.
An apartment was taken out by a tornado, multiple entrapments.
This shopping center in Evansville, Indiana, heavily damaged, littered with shattered glass and rubble. At least 3 deaths reported in Kansas and Illinois from the storms. More severe weather plaguing other parts of the country over the weekend, with heavy wind and rain drenching parts of Oklahoma, stranding drivers on a Kansas highway, and flooding a bridge to get to this farm. Floodwaters also rising in several communities across the South.
Oh, a lot of stuff has floated away.
While out west and across the plains, millions are feeling the heat.
It's really hot.
A wild weekend of weather as summer officially gets underway. And Savannah, just to give you a sense, the sun is barely up here and it is already 80 degrees. The high today here in Houston expected to be 92 degrees, but that is going to feel more like 105. Savannah?
Ooh, girl, by the end of your live shots today, I bet you're running around in that water behind me, behind you. Priscilla, thank you so much. Stay cool. For more, let's get a check on your morning news now weather with meteorologist Andrea Romero. She joins us with the latest. Hey, Andrea, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. And this morning, along with the heat, we're also tracking some severe weather that's impacting parts of the country, stretching all the way from the northeast into here, parts of the southern plains. In particular, this batch here that's moving from Oklahoma into Arkansas, extending into the Tennessee Valley. Over 40 million people are being impacted by this flood watch. We just have some flash flood warnings in effect this morning. And we have the severe threat that's impacting parts of New York all the way into Wyoming. So So like 54 million people are at risk of these damaging wind gusts, damaging hail, and we do have the possibility of some isolated tornadoes. The risk is not as high as it was this weekend, but we could see some tornadoes spin up in parts of these areas. Now, this is all happening along this frontal boundary that will continue to bring these isolated storms throughout the day today. We're expecting more summer showers for tomorrow as the rain returns to parts of the soggy plains, storms capable of producing wind, hail, and even some tornadoes, although the risk is definitely lower for tomorrow. 5 million people are at risk here in parts of Colorado and into Kansas. We're expecting even into Oklahoma some of that severe weather tomorrow. Now, the heat alert, that's in effect for the western part of the country into the southwest, stretching into Texas. We have 21 million people that are being impacted by these heat advisories, these heat watches, even up into Seattle. We're talking about above average temperatures that are in the triple digits where the heat is at its worst, which is in parts of Texas, as we can see, with 3 consecutive days of over 100 degrees expected. Now, there is some heat relief here in the northern plains and parts of the Great Lakes and even the Northeast. Temperatures are a little bit below average in those areas and will continue below average tomorrow, but things will start to warm up as the week progresses. Savannah, back to you.
Andrea, thank you so much. Lots for people to watch out for across the country. Appreciate it. Well, we have some breaking news this morning. Alan Greenspan, the former longtime chair of the Federal Reserve, has passed away at the age of 100. Greenspan served as chair at the central bank for nearly 2 decades, serving 4 presidents from 1987 to 2006. He also was the husband of our NBC colleague, our beloved colleague, Andrea Mitchell. Meet the press moderator, Kristen Welker, takes a look back at Greenspan's long career.
Alan Greenspan may be most remembered outside of Washington for his indecipherable testimonies and pronouncements before Congress. It was all by design.
When, say, a congressman asks you a question and you don't want to say no comment or I won't answer or something like that, so I proceed with 4 or 5 sentences which get increasingly obscure. The congressman thinks I answered the question and goes on to the next one. The housing market in the United States is quite heterogeneous, and it does not have the capacity to move excesses easily.
He was called Greenspeak. He was famous for talking a lot and not saying very much, but doing so intentionally. What he said very famously is, if you understand what I'm saying, I must have misspoken.
As opaque as they were, Greenspan's words still moved markets.
How do we know when irrational exuberance?
After hearing that phrase, irrational exuberance, the markets tanked. Long before he was calling the tune of the economy, Greenspan was trying to make it in the music world. He was born in the Washington Heights neighborhood of New York City in 1926, the son of a stockbroker, but he chose to study clarinet and piano. He even became a professional musician, but it wasn't to be his career.
The most important economic decision that I made was to leave the music business.
Greenspan then chose economics, earning a Ph.D., working on Wall Street for 30 years, and for Presidents Nixon and Ford.
Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Alan Greenspan back to official service to his country.
In 1987, President Reagan appointed him chairman of the Federal Reserve. Greenspan remained in the post for almost 20 years through the presidencies of Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton, and then George W. Bush.
When he was Fed chairman, there was the longest U.S. economic expansion on record.
But as good as the economy was during most of Greenspan's career at the Fed, he will also be remembered for one big moment toward the end of his tenure.
He missed the housing bubble, and second, he thought that the complicated derivatives that had become so rife inside the financial system would regulate themselves. That turned out to be wrong.
I was shocked because
he later admitted his mistake as the economy slid into recession in 2008. Greenspan made another very important decision. In 1984, he asked NBC's own Andrea Mitchell out on a date. The pair became the ultimate Washington power couple. They were married in 1997 by Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In 2002, Greenspan was knighted by Britain's Queen Elizabeth. In 2005, George W. Bush awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
He is a believer in economic freedom, open and flexible markets, and boundless human creativity.
In the end, Alan Greenspan believed in capitalism as surely as he believed in himself. It is a system, he said, that holds integrity and trustworthiness as cardinal virtues. Kristen Welker, NBC News, Washington.
Oh, wow, Kristen, what a great look back. And we are thinking of our friend Andrea this morning. Thank you so much for that. There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including just how much the war in Iran has cost drivers across the country as some of the pain at the pump begins to slowly heal. First, though, after the break, a look ahead to Team USA's next World Cup matchup, fresh off their win against Australia this weekend. But do they have what it takes to win it all? We're going to take a closer look next. We are back now with a look at the U.S. men's national team that is cruising into the knockout round of the World Cup. The U.S. men have now claimed the top spot in their group by rolling through their first two matches of the tournament. And after another thrilling World Cup weekend, soccer fans from around the world have plenty to talk about this morning. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch is live in Miami with all the highlights for us. Hey, Jesse, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. The Americans have just scored a huge coup. Because they have clinched their group already, the last match in this opening round effectively does not matter for the U.S. win, lose, or draw. That means they can rest key players ahead of the battles to come, and the Americans are not the only ones dreaming big.
Following this shutout win over Australia, this morning, the U.S. is officially heading to the World Cup knockout stage.
They're a powerhouse team. I think they can play with any of them right now.
And the team's making history along the way. That 2-0 takedown marks back-to-back World Cup wins, which the U.S. men have not pulled off since 1930.
Hopefully they can keep it going.
The team delivering, even with superstar Christian Pulisic still recovering from injury. And former U.S. men's star Taylor Twellman says the two wins set the team up to take it a little easy in their next game this week against Turkey.
Winning the group was imperative in a 48-team tournament because now they will play a third-place qualifier, and that really sets the United States up to avoiding any of the heavy hitters until the quarterfinals.
This is the best I've ever seen them.
The Americans hardly the only ones celebrating this weekend. Curacao tied Ecuador. Goalkeeper Eloy Room making 15 saves. Another island underdog, Cape Verde, also broke even against Uruguay. Their goalkeeper, known as Vozinha, skyrocketing to fame after shutting out powerhouse Spain. His mother missed that game because she did not have a visa, but the U.S. State Department offered to help, and his mother made it to Miami for last night's game. Meanwhile, far beyond the pitch, the fans continue to shine. Norway's Viking row echoing through New York's Times Square. And after a very public love affair between the city of Boston and Scotland's Tartan Army,
it has been a lot of fun, but for now, we're moving on.
The bagpipes and kilts are taking their talents to South Beach, not without a fond farewell for the devoted soccer fans who drank up so much of Boston and its beer. The Boston Globe printing a full-page thank you, writing, "We'll never forget the joy you brought to our city."
Now, the big question for the U.S. men's national team right now is, what is Christian Pulisic's health status? Is he ready to play? Even if he is fully recovered from his injury, you may not want to play him in this last group stage match again. It does not matter. The outcome does not matter. So do you risk re-aggravating his injury? Maybe not. But at the same time, maybe you want to get him some playing time so he can get back into a rhythm. So that is one of the big things we're watching for right now, Savannah. The other big thing I'm keeping an eye on is that Tartan Army. I want to know if they're going to drink all of the beer down here in Miami. But the saving grace we have here is if we run out of beer, we've still got mojitos.
So true. Yeah, I heard, wasn't that they ran out of beer on their flights over? Too funny. All right, Jesse Kirsch, thank you so much. That was fun. Well, for more analysis on the World Cup, let's bring in Casey White. She's an MLS analyst and a former U.S. women's national team player. Casey, good morning. And thank you so much for spending some time with us. So let's start, of course, with the U.S. There's a lot of buzz around them after those back-to-back wins. So do you think that expectations have changed here around how far they can go in this tournament?
I think internal expectations of the team has not changed one bit. However, the expectations of the country have now grown. Everyone's excitement is growing. And this is a team that by winning the first 2 games really got everyone going.
Before the World Cup started, we were talking about Spain, we were talking about France being favorites to win it all. There are still several teams who have yet to play their second matches, but do you think that that still rings true?
From the beginning, I've always thought France and Spain were going to be contenders to win this World Cup. Even though Spain had a tough first outing, they definitely bounced back. But you're still looking at teams like Argentina as a defending champion, and also teams that are in form, like the Netherlands, like England. Those are teams that are playing really well at this point. And the common denominator between all these top teams is they all have an X factor in a player that can score goals and change a game on their head. And so that's really going to determine things down the line.
Casey, we've seen some surprising results from underdog teams, which is always fun. Is there a Cinderella story that you're keeping an eye on as we move toward the knockout round?
One of the teams that I think we have to mention is Cape Verde, just what they have done to galvanize their country. They've endeared themselves to the American public, to the world on a global stage, just to get out of group play, to have that chance in the 3rd stage of group play is incredible for them. Morocco's another team that they are ranked within the top 10 in FIFA World Rankings. They were a semifinalist in 2022. But once you're towards the top, it's hard to stay there. And they have come out and they've performed quite well. They need to continue going. I think this is a team that could make it far again here in 2026.
Wow. All right, finally, give us a preview of today's matches. Which game are you looking forward to most?
Argentina, Austria, they both have a chance to win the group. That is a big game. It's an entertaining game, and everyone's wondering what's Messi going to continue to do. The other piece is Norway, Senegal. Senegal needs to get a result in this game, but Norway has the opportunity to show that they're for real and that they can stay at the top of the group.
All right, Casey White, fun to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, buyer's remorse. Latino voters gave President Trump a big boost in 2024, but new polling shows some of them are souring on the president. We'll hear from business owners in southern Texas about why they're changing their minds. That's next. Now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning, starting with souring relations between President Trump and the Italian Prime Minister. NBC News senior national political reporter John Allen is here with more. John, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. This is a little bananas. A spat from the G7 hit diplomatic DEFCON 1 over the weekend. President Donald Trump still sore at Italy's Giorgia Meloni. She refused to support the U.S. and Israel in the war with Iran. Now Trump says she begged to get a picture with him at the G7 last week in France. Meloni says that's a bunch of bunk. And Trump's telling Meloni is cozying up to her to help her standing at home. But she says that makes no sense. Quote, as for my popularity, being your friend has certainly not helped it, she said. And she added, my popularity is none of your concern. I suggest you focus on yours. The war of words has been even nastier in New York's Democratic primaries. Tomorrow's election will be the first big test referendum on Mayor Zoran Mamdani's power as a validator of other Democrats. He's made a series of endorsements that are worth watching, and in one of them, Mamdani is backing Brad Lander, the former city comptroller, in a challenge to incumbent Dan Goldman. Goldman declined to endorse Mamdani for mayor in 2025, and he's seeing revenge now. One other race to keep an eye on, the 12th district. 8 Democrats are running to succeed Representative Jerry Nadler. The list includes never Trump lawyer and television pundit George Conway and JFK's grandson, Jack Schlossberg. But the favorites are more traditional candidates, State Assemblyman Michael Asher and Alex Boris. And finally, Americans say we need to do a little more book learning when it comes to democracy. That according to a new national NBC News poll sponsored by More Perfect, a nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to advancing democracy. 3,000 adults polled nationwide. 80% think the U.S. puts too little emphasis on civic education, basically the teaching of government and democracy. That includes 87% of progressives and 84% of MAGA Republicans. And Savannah, as I hand it back to you, let me just say, I'm happy to take a picture with you at the G7 anytime.
Love it. We should definitely do that, Sean. Thank you so much.
Especially if it's in Evian, Le Bon, France.
Yeah, exactly. No kidding. You've been seeing what that looked like. Thank you. All right, staying on political news, some Latino voters are having some buyer's remorse, they're saying, after they helped bring the president back to the White House in 2024. Now, ahead of the pivotal midterm elections in November, a recent NBC News poll shows 64% of Latino voters disapprove of the president's job performance. Several Latino business owners in southern Texas say a lot of the disappointment has to do with the state of the economy. NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro explains.
Construction is the lifeblood of the South Texas economy. But some say that foundation is starting to crack under the weight of the current White House, even those who voted for President Trump.
Yes, I voted for Mr. Trump, but at the same time, I'm man enough to admit that.
Mario Guerrero owns a construction business in McAllen, Texas, just minutes away from the border with Mexico, and says he's gotten death threats for speaking out publicly about his dissatisfaction with the current administration.
I thought because he was a business-oriented mind, very successful man, that I believe that we should all credit, we would see a roaring economy. Unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing.
Instead, he says, even with the stock market at record highs and unemployment still low, tariffs raised the cost of building materials, and fears of Trump administration ICE raids scared workers from showing up to job sites. It prompted him to put up a fence with no trespassing and private property signs around this entire development to make workers, he says, who have legal immigration status feel safe.
When you're seeing people get apprehended that have done everything right, to be in the United States, to provide a better life for their family, that's where you start asking yourself, do we choose the right person?
South Texas, a historically blue stronghold, flipped red in the last presidential election, with President Trump winning 12 out of the 14 counties that touched the U.S.-Mexico border, compared to the 5 he won in 2016. But some Latino Trump voters left with buyer's remorse, a trend that extends throughout the country, according to the U.S. Hispanic Business Council, a nonprofit business league advocating for Hispanic small business owners. A poll of its members in early 2025 showed nearly 70% believed President Trump's policies would improve the U.S. economy. Those sentiments now changed, with the president's approval rating under 40%, a number mirrored in NBC News' latest poll of adults nationally.
The very people that thought, this guy will fix things for me and it'll be better for my business. The circumstances are even worse now.
Javier Palomares, president and CEO of the organization, says the feeling extends beyond South Texas.
You're really rethinking the choices they made. We're kind of stuck as it is right now. That's not to say that it's too late.
Texas voters will have a chance to make their voices heard in the upcoming midterms, a Senate seat that could tip the balance of power in Washington. A runoff for the Republican ticket went the way of Trump.
Tonight, we just sent a Texas-sized message to Washington.
State Attorney General Ken Paxton, endorsed by the president, beat out John Cornyn, a 4-term senator. Paxton will face James Tallarico in the midterms.
Thank you.
The Democrats swept all but one of the counties along the border in his primary, where the population is mostly Hispanic.
The only minority destroying America is the billionaires.
Guerrero tells us he doesn't take his choice lightly.
I was a person that didn't believe in voting. I didn't think it made a difference, but now I understand that it's the only thing that we have as American citizens.
Building his business and sending a concrete message to politicians that he's looking for change. Valerie Castro, NBC News.
Coming up, pain at the pump. A new analysis shows some drivers have been paying hundreds more for gas since the start of the war with Iran. We'll dig into which states have been hit the hardest and find out what we can all do to save some money. That's next. Welcome back. Since the war with Iran began in February, higher gas prices have cost Americans billions of dollars at the pump. While prices have started to ease in some parts of the country, they are still much higher than they were just a few months ago. Researchers at Brown University estimate drivers have spent an extra $33 billion on gas since the conflict began. Now, an NBC News analysis of AAA data found some drivers have individually paid as much as $300 more, depending on how often they fill up. We have NBC News digital data editor Joe Murphy here to break down what higher gas prices have meant for drivers' wallets. Joe, good morning.
Morning.
Great to see you as someone who lives in New York, where the prices are always higher for things here. It is wild when I go and fill up at the pump. I mean, it is just like really something with these prices in some places kissing almost $7. I know that your team analyzed AAA data, but then you also have this tool. You built a tool. Walk us through what this tool does and what it showed you.
For sure. So gas prices are down about $1 from their May peak. Americans are filling up about 350 million gallons of gas every day.
Wow.
But the actual effect of the cost depends on where you live, how often you fill up. And right. So this is why this calculator is handy.
Yeah.
We've got the big picture. You know, Americans are, as a whole, are spending way more. But then what the story really is about the individual, you know, families, the individual households, and how much they pay.
Totally. So on our website right now, we have this calculator, and you essentially put in like how many times I fill up, that type of thing. You're able to put in some of your own factors.
That's right. Ashley on our team pitched it, reported out the story. The calculator, you put in how big your tank is, how often you fill up, and where you live. And it gives you the results of about how much more you've paid since the start.
Oh, wow.
of
And
the
look
war.
at that before the war, during the war. Wow, that's incredible. Have any states taken steps to try to make this easier for people that live there?
Some states have tried it out. Georgia had a gas tax holiday that lapsed. Kentucky statewide gas tax holiday also lapsed. Indiana has one in place now, and Utah next week can expect to see prices a little bit lower when they get a holiday.
Which states had seen the highest jump in prices?
Right. So you have what states are paying now. You look at Alaska, Utah, Wyoming, even New York. They're up there. But then you also can look at how much you have paid over the course of the war. And I ran some numbers this weekend. Utahns are paying about $1,000 for gas since the start of the war. And that's, if you look at what they were paying before the war, they would have been paying $600 for that gas.
Wow.
So they're paying almost $400 more. Illinois are paying about $1,050 for what would have been $680 worth of gas before the war.
Wow.
Georgia, you're only paying $900 for what would have been $600 of gas before the war. So you have it pretty good in Georgia.
And you got to imagine that makes people spend their money different generally.
It's true. We're seeing effects of that. People are going out. They're not going out. They are cutting down on shopping trips, non-essential shopping trips. They're not doing that as often. They're cutting down on vacations. There's a lot of different ways that this is affecting people. It's affecting lower income people the most.
All right, Joe, thank you so much for being here. Good stuff. That calculator is cool. Go check it out on NBCnews.com, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, after paying more at the pump, here's some good news for your wallet. We've got big sales popping up this week on everything from summer essentials and then also electronics, groceries, and home goods. Our friend NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung is here with some of the best summer deals. Brian, good morning. Good to see you. So where can we shop this week to start finding some good sales?
Yeah, well, those sales are beginning today. So let's start off with both Walmart and Best Buy, where those deals do begin today. They last through as late as Sunday. We've been seeing 50% off things like patio, garden, home and pet supplies. Best Buy 50 to 60% off TVs, gaming sets. But then tomorrow is going to be the big day where Amazon and Target kick off their holidays for the sales. That's going to begin again tomorrow, going through Friday the 26th, 20 to 45% off backyard essentials, other types of categories at Amazon. And at Target Circle, back to school items, home beauty, apparel, and toys. So if you have anything in your cart right now, might be a good time to double check and make sure you truly are getting the best deals, because we could see some of the steepest discounts now until we get to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, when we'll see better deals. But again, the summer sales are really heating up right now.
All right, that's exciting. All right, with inflation, though, still stretching budgets, things like gas prices we were just talking about, are we seeing good deals on everyday essentials, like things that people have to buy, like groceries?
Yeah, well, when you take a look at Amazon, where they have Amazon Fresh as well as Whole Foods, you see that they are offering some deals for, let's say, for example, a summer barbecue, where prices for groceries are up and affordability does remain an issue. So $1 to $3 summer barbecue staples for things like cherries, hot dogs, buns, corn, again, things that you would need for your barbecue too. That's what Amazon is advertising. They're also offering 40 to 45% off certain personal care, cleaning supplies, and they're even offering 1 year of free groceries for 100 sweepstakes winners. Anyone that has an order over $15 during the Amazon Prime Days will be entered into that lottery. So that could be a big winning for those 100 people. Again, Target has some discounts as well, 20% off some personal care items, and Walmart, 25% off some snacks. So again, as affordability does remain an issue and cookout costs remain high, these retailers trying to help people get around those higher price tags.
Brian, what should we get right now, though, and what should we wait on?
Yeah, it seems like these days there's like a sales holiday every week. So I think when you take a look at the June holidays that we're seeing from the likes of Target and Walmart, experts are telling us that really this is a good time to get back to school items. They will still be on the shelves right now. If you do wait until August, then you run the risk of course, going to the store and nothing is available there. They also say that electronics could have some pretty good discounts now, although laptops, you do want to wait until a little bit closer to back to school to truly get the best deal. But always use price comparison apps to make sure you're getting the best price. And of course, don't buy anything that you don't need, trying to reduce on waste, especially with all these sales events going on out there. But again, some pretty good deals to be had out there this summer.
Don't buy anything you don't need. Great advice, Bri. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Good news. All right. Well, while we focus on the prices of our groceries, we've been talking a lot about how we're paying more attention to what goes into some of these things that we're consuming. Well, this morning, in a first of its kind partnership, America's top beverage companies are launching an initiative to help consumers get ingredient safety information in real time on their smartphones. NBC News Chief Consumer Investigative Correspondent Vicki Nguyen has an exclusive first look. Vicki, good morning.
Hey there, normally companies like Pepsi and Coca-Cola are in fierce competition, but now they're teaming up. This move coming as more consumers demand transparency around the products they eat and drink. But critics say the site doesn't provide a complete picture, and people should rely on multiple sources for nutrition information. On billions of packaged beverages sold in America, a new push to share health information using QR codes. Just scan with your smartphone and you'll be directed to a website where you can find goodtoknowfacts.org. Tap the link and you can see the ingredients in your drink, their functions, and how food safety regulators in the U.S. and globally view that ingredient.
It really is about transparency, and it listens to what consumers are asking.
How are they using it? Meredith Potter is the Chief Strategy Officer at the American Beverage Association, which represents major beverage makers including Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Dr. Pepper. They teamed up to develop the site.
One of the things that we heard everywhere we went, particularly was from parents, is questions about ingredients.
The QR code will be printed on drinks including soda, tea, protein, energy, and sports drinks. It's a one-stop shop for information from the FDA, European Food Safety Authority, and Health Canada. I'm just going to scan the QR code. I looked up monopotassium phosphate, an ingredient in this Gatorade lower sugar drink. So it tells me where it's authorized for use, U.S., Europe, and Canada. It's a fair amount of information here. The move comes as Americans are focusing more on what's in their food and drinks for better health. A recent survey by the research firm EY found 6 in 10 consumers pay attention to ingredients when choosing beverages.
Here's how to read an ingredient list in 30 seconds.
I love reading ingredients where I know what every single one listed is.
It's pushed the rise in popularity of nutrition apps such as Yuka, Bobby Approved, and Zoe, now used by a quarter of Americans. With many popular soft drinks getting low health scores due to high sugar content and additives like colors, preservatives, and sweeteners. A lot of these drinks contain sugar or chemicals. Is there a concern that with this nutrition label, people will buy fewer of these drinks?
Well, I think the great thing is there's so many choices, right? We don't decide what is safe. Food safety experts in regulatory bodies and food safety agencies around the world assess and reassess the safety of ingredients.
Consumers really need to be going to other trusted sites that are not funded by industry to get the real information about the ingredients in their foods.
Cardiologist and director of the Food is Medicine Institute at Tufts University, Dr. Dariush Mosafarian, says the site falls short of giving consumers the most updated information and research. What do you think about this initiative?
The public deserves facts, not marketing. The website highlights information based on outdated government reviews that are in some cases decades old. It ignores hundreds of more recent research studies that really suggest harms about many of these ingredients.
He notes that just because an ingredient is FDA approved doesn't mean it's good for you. What is your bottom line advice?
Start with the basics. Go to the grocery store. Fill your cart with foods that look close to how they come from nature. Fruits, vegetables, beans, nuts, fish, other minimally processed foods. When it comes to drinks, look for water, sparkling water, unsweetened tea or coffee. Small changes repeated every day can really make a big difference in your health.
Now, the ABA says the industry put together this website in part to battle misinformation. For example, that ingredients that are banned in other countries are allowed in the U.S. While that is true, in some cases, this QR code will allow consumers to quickly learn more about what is in their drinks. Pepsi's beverages already have the feature. Coca-Cola will complete its rollout this month, and Dr. Pepper will have the code soon. Bottom line, Dr. Mozafarian says it is good that consumers are paying more attention to what they put in their bodies because food is more than calories. It affects your mood, gut health, and lifespan. Back to you.
Oh, no kidding. All right, Vicki, good news there. Coming up, back in the groove, how a simple setup of some vinyl records and vintage speakers has turned into a series of sellout events as people rediscover the joy of listening to classic albums. We have that story queued up for you next. Finally this hour, let's cue the record. Throughout generations, listening to music has brought communities together, no matter the genre. New data from the recording industry shows sales for vinyl records topped $1 billion last year. Well, now, one New York City-based group is hosting listening sessions to preserve music and its history with vinyl as the star. NBC News correspondent Marquise Francis has more.
Think book club for music lovers. Cue the Record, a Brooklyn, New York-based group that hosts listening sessions, is on a mission to preserve music and its cultural history in an ever-evolving digital world. The simple concept is a hit, with sold-out events and viral videos.
Welcome. How we feeling out there?
With vinyl of a featured album, a record player, and 2 old-school-style Klipsch Cornwall speakers, the group is encouraging attendees to simply slow down.
We're moving at the speed of light. Part of that exploration in analog sound is to really take us through the process and to slow us down in that moment.
Mustafa Ali Smith, a Chicago native, started the sessions with a friend in a Brooklyn bar back in 2024 when he was a grad student at Princeton.
We didn't even have the big sound systems that we have now. We had at a wine bar, at the house sound system, and just a love for music and our friends.
Today, that once small gathering has grown into a bi-weekly event series of more than 100 attendees that sells out within days.
What is it about Brooklyn that is a unique and special home for this?
To be able to share the stories, share the history and the records, and contextualize it in this Black-owned studio space in Brooklyn adds so much to the listening experience.
Hosted sessions have featured albums from the likes of pop icons Michael Jackson and Mariah Carey, to hit-making rapper Future and Grammy award-winning jazz artist Samara Joy. Songs from the albums are played, background on each track is shared, plus a portion for Q&A.
For someone who hasn't seen you all on TikTok, what would you want them to know about this event, this space, this organization?
When I think about what's happening in this room around the music is teaching us how to connect with each other.
Lauryn Noel Hill.
I popped into a sold-out listening session featuring Lauryn Hill's breakout song Doo Wop from her debut album.
I crave human interaction and I love music.
It allows you to actually listen to it from a different angle.
I'm open to bonding, and I think that's the expectation.
In a world that moves at a frenetic pace, inside a city that never sleeps, one option is always Cue the Record. Marquise Francis, NBC News.
How cool is that to see? Love it. Marquise, thank you so much for that. And that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now, but there's a lot going on. Don't go anywhere. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.